all our data sources, our interfaces need two things back. It needs a date and a value. And in ODBC, it's actually looking for those as the return columns, date and value. So for a current one, there's a nice example clear. Give me the top one, date value from a table where ID equals some parameter. Okay, so we're getting back the most current date and value. And if you had future data in there, suppose the customer has some forecast data, the most current value, then you would also have a where the date is less than or equal to now sort of thing. So you can really write whatever you want inside of these as long as they return back a date and a value for current value. For a trend, it's going to return back numeric data. Same sort of concept, but this time you do it where the date falls in between a start and end date. And these start and end dates are kind of keywords in our system, and basically when a user says, give me a trend, and on their phone they've entered some dates or it's been configured for these certain dates, we will then do a string replace of start date and end date with the dates they passed in. And the third one that you're going to need to write is historical value, and that is basically if I go back a week, what was the value a week ago, or what was the value on January 3rd? And that's, again, a pretty simple query. Date and value from the table where the parameters equal this, and date is less than or equal to whatever that user passed in. And timestamp is another one of our reserved words. We'll string replace that with whatever date they want to see. And historical data, probably one you're not going to need a lot, but sometimes customers have a mix between numeric and non-numeric, and if there's a lot, you may want to filter out the non-numeric in the trend data. So where value is numeric sort of thing is a where clause, and then historical data, which you'll see like kind of everything, you may not want to do that, but that is very optional and not used a lot. So it's really the top three. So where these things get complex, or where complexity comes in, obviously is a very simple example on top. You may end up with 20 joins in a table. You may end up being asked to do things like, well, I don't just want the current value, I want the current rolling 24-hour average. Still do the same thing, it's just SQL, and in the end, I want a date and a value, but you may have to do a bunch of math in there for that, if that's a requirement. Not often the case, but it does happen. So, the queries can get complex if the data source is quite complex, or if the customer is asking for something other than give me the first column and the third column. And if you're having to do math and aggregation in there, then it's just SQL. It doesn't really change anything. If you know SQL, you can do it, but it can get more complex.
And sometimes we actually run into customers, believe it, that have poorly structured databases in the first place. Like they've got bad metadata, they've got bad tables, they've got poorly indexed tables, and so sometimes you'll run into interface creation task where part of the work has to be pushed back on the customer to say, look, we're going to need an index on this table because it's slow.
Yeah.
And that's not something that we can effectively overcome within the interface definition. We can just say, hey, this takes 10 seconds when it should take 100 milliseconds. So,
yeah. And really, again, kind of the last little set of queries here is when you start doing this, just like I said, I want to get the temperature from unit 4, you want to start writing a query like that. Like maybe in their table, they have their dates called X time, so you want to select top one X time and some val from a table where ID equals 20 and category equals whatever. And then once you get that working, we can do this sort of parameter deal that you see right here. So I want a date and a value. So I said 1x time as date, and then I parameterize some val for whatever, because it may be some val in the first query and value 6 in another query, and you can parameterize that. And then what this will look like in the designer is you got 0, 1, and 2. And then in a Visual KPI designer, when the user uses this, they're going to say some val 20 foobar. Some val will get put into the 0, 20 gets put into where the 1 is, and foobar gets put into where the 2 is. It's really a simple string replacement. It's not very complex, and you'll understand it more. You don't now, but you'll understand it more as we go through.
Hi, Christian. This is Murthy here.
Hello.
Hi,
Yes.
Murthy.
Hi. Yeah. So have you used CT in the queries?
Yeah,
Common
CTEs.
table.
Yes, use them all the time, especially when you have things like rolling averages, and you may want buckets. I want to know what this is week by week, and then you do a CTE to get your dates set up, and you can do whatever you want. You can use store procedures and call the store procedure from it. I mean, you can definitely use it as long as the data source supports it. If you're using MySQL, might not be able to use CTEs, so they don't have them. Oracle has a slightly different flavor, and SQL obviously would have a CTE. So yes, you definitely can use them, and I wrote one yesterday.
Okay. Yeah,
Good question. Yes, you're welcome.